A stolen pupa drops into the frozen dirt. An empire hinges on this single breath. High in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, dense pine forests conceal an unrelenting war for survival. Deep within a sunlit clearing, a massive mound of pine needles hums with life. This is the fortress of Formica wood ants, a peaceful colony housing tens of thousands of dedicated workers and an irreplaceable nursery of young larvae. Yet just 20 yards away, hidden beneath decaying tree bark, another force waits in total silence. They are Polyergus breviceps, the slave-making ants, specialized killers engineered strictly for war. A veteran Polyergus scout moves swiftly across the forest floor. She does not harvest seeds, nor does she tend to fungal gardens. Evolution has stripped her species of the ability to feed themselves or nurture their own young. Her jaw features fearsome, curved, razor-sharp blades designed for one brutal purpose: piercing armor and decapitating enemies. Without fresh workers from a host colony to serve them, her entire lineage will starve to death before autumn arrives. A desperate search against the clock begins now. What happens next changes everything. The scout locks onto the unmistakable chemical trail of her target colony. Returning to her hidden citadel, she releases a potent recruitment pheromone that unleashes an army with overwhelming numbers. Hundreds of crimson raiders pour out into the sunlight, forming a disciplined, terrifying battle line. They march in lockstep across the rugged terrain, moving with terrifying speed toward the unsuspecting Formica mound. As the raider squad reaches the perimeter, Formica sentries instantly raise the alarm. Defender ants swarm the entrance, spraying formic acid into the air to blind the attackers. But the raiders do not halt. The scout commander launches a full-scale invasion, driving her frontline warriors straight through the defensive wall. Sickle-shaped mandibles slice through limbs and antennae in brutal close-quarters combat. Multiple defenders fall in the line of duty, making the ultimate sacrifice to buy time for the nursery below. She doesn't know the real threat is still coming. Deep inside the dark, subterranean corridors, panicked workers grab thousands of silk cocoons and race toward the lowest chambers. The raiders breach the primary gates, filling the narrow soil passages with heavy chemical smog. The scout leads her shock troops deeper into the maze, ignoring adult soldiers to focus exclusively on the nursery. She is here to steal the future of an entire kingdom, guarding the next generation with their lives as Formica workers desperately stack brood bags against the lower doors. Dust and soil cascade from the earthen ceiling as the raiders push deeper into the dark maze. The air grows hot and thick with alarm pheromones. The Formica defenders, though physically smaller and lacking lethal curved mandibles, refuse to surrender their home. They lock their jaws onto the legs of the raider vanguard, dragging the invaders into suffocating side chambers. Every inch of soil is contested, turning the subterranean passages into a grueling war of attrition. Suddenly, the raider scout commander senses a strange shift in the subterranean airflow. The fleeing Formica nurse ants abruptly stop running. Instead of scattering in blind panic, hundreds of Formica defenders spring a meticulously prepared counter-ambush. They flood out from hidden side ventilation shafts, sealing the raiders inside a narrow, dead-end tunnel. High concentrations of concentrated formic acid vapor saturate the chamber, dissolving the wax coatings on the raiders' exoskeletons and suffocating their respiratory spiracles. But then, everything changes. The raider commander realizes her shock squad is caught in a lethal trap. Panic spreads through the vanguard as choking acid fumes blind dozens of veteran warriors. Yet, the commander's relentless military instincts take over. Using her massive sickle mandibles, she brutally pierces through the clay wall of the ambush chamber, creating an emergency breach. Her surviving raiders surge through the opening, turning the tables on the ambushers and pushing through the choke point toward the central nursery chamber. She has no idea what's tracking her scent in the shadows above. Breaking into the primary brood vault, the raiders witness a breathtaking sight. Thousands of white silk cocoons lie stacked in pristine subterranean cradles. Nurse ants cling desperately to their charges, attempting to cover the young with their own bodies. The raiders show no interest in slaughtering the defenseless nurses. With surgical precision, they gently snatch the plump cocoons between their lethal mandibles, prioritizing the health of their future captives over raw violence. She doesn't know the real threat is still coming. As the raiders begin loading their heavy cargo for the retreat, a violent tremor shakes the earthen walls of the nursery vault. Soil crumbles from the ceiling as a second, unexpected army crashes through the outer walls. Another raider scout team from a rival Polyergus colony has tracked the exact same chemical trail. They have arrived to hijack the prize, opening a bloody second front deep underground. Chaos erupts in the dimly lit nursery vault as three distinct armies clash in total darkness. The rival Polyergus raiders charge with terrifying aggression, slicing through both Formica defenders and the original raiders without hesitation. Sickle jaws snap against chitinous armor like shears cutting through brittle twigs. Severed limbs clutter the floor as the original raiders fight simultaneously to secure their stolen loot and protect their own flanks. For the Formica host colony, this nightmare threatens to bring an end to their entire lineage, as the dynasty ends in bloodshed if every single pupa is stolen. Standing at the epicenter of the carnage, the Raider Scout commander refuses to let her mission fail. Holding a pristine silk cocoon tightly in her jaws, she uses her body as a shield against a strike from a rival warrior. With her free legs, she kicks out, throwing dirt into the face of her attacker before driving her sickle mandibles into the rival's thorax. She realizes that attempting to wipe out the rival squad inside the collapsing tunnel is suicide. Victory requires securing the payload and executing an immediate retreat. What happens next changes everything. Signaling her surviving soldiers with high-frequency stridulations, vibrating her abdomen to send acoustic shockwaves through the soil, she orders a disciplined fighting retreat. The raiders form a tight defensive phalanx, surrounding the carriers loaded with stolen pupae. Step by step, they fight their way backward, clawing up the vertical exit shafts while holding off the combined onslaught of enraged Formica defenders behind them and relentless rival raiders above. Yet an even greater danger awaits at the surface. Surging out of the dark mound entrance, the raiders break into the blinding mountain sunlight. The air is fresh, but the gauntlet is far from over. Dozens of rival raiders pursue them out onto the open forest floor, attempting to ambush the laden carriers in the pine needle debris. The commander turns back, positioning herself at the mouth of the tunnel alongside three veteran warriors. They lock their legs into the dirt, forming an impenetrable rear guard. She doesn't know the real threat is still coming. One by one, her rearguard companions fall in the line of duty under the weight of superior numbers, making the ultimate sacrifice so the carrier unit can escape. The commander sustains a crippling wound to her rear leg, yet she continues to fight, wielding her razor-sharp mandibles with ferocious precision. She drives back the rival vanguard just long enough for the main column to gain a crucial 20-yard head start toward their home territory. Limping heavily on 5 legs, the wounded raider commander catches up to the rear guard of her retreating column. The forest floor is a minefield of fallen pine cones, exposed roots and treacherous gravel. Each raider, carrying a heavy silk cocoon, moves at half her normal speed, vulnerable to any opportunistic predator watching from the canopy. The afternoon sun casts long, ominous shadows across the forest floor, signaling that temperatures will soon plunge below freezing as night approaches the Rockies. Suddenly, the ground shakes beneath them. A massive western fence lizard, hunting among the dry pine needles, detects the movement of the red column. Its golden eyes lock onto the marching raiders. With lightning speed, the reptile strikes, its tongue snapping out to engulf 3 carriers in a fraction of a second. The column shatters in momentary panic as the giant predator steps directly across their path, blocking the only narrow trail back to their subterranean stronghold. So what does she do next? Without a moment's hesitation, the commander rallies her remaining vanguard. Though half her size, they do not flee. Instead of trying to fight the armored lizard directly, She orders her troops to release a concentrated burst of alarming alarm pheromones directly toward the reptile's nostrils. The sharp, volatile chemical spray irritates the lizard's sensitive nasal passages, forcing the giant beast to shake its head in discomfort and retreat several feet into the brush. The path is open once more. She has no idea if the home nest will even recognize her scent after the bloody ordeal. Bleeding hemolymph and exhausted to the brink of collapse, the raiders march the final stretch toward their hidden home beneath the rotting ponderosa pine log. The stolen harvest, over 400 intact Formica pupae, is carried carefully above the dirt. These precious cocoons represent the future of their entire colony. In a few short weeks, these captive eggs will hatch into loyal, industrious workers who will nurse the Polyergus larvae, hunt for honeydew, and keep the parasitic empire alive for another season. But then, everything changes. At the threshold of the home nest, resident Formica slave workers pour out to meet the returning warriors. Recognizing the familiar colony scent despite the iron and acid stench of battle, the slaves gently take the stolen pupae from the jaws of the weary raiders, carrying them down into warm, humid incubator vaults. The wounded commander pauses at the entrance, watching the last cocoon disappear into the dark safety below. Deep inside the subterranean royal chamber, the Polyergus queen sits, surrounded by her attent worker slaves. These enslaved Formica workers, born in this very nest after a past raid, groom her body and feed her rich regurgitated nectar. They treat her not as a captor, but as their own biological mother, completely deceived by the lingering chemical signature she stole long ago. The arrival of hundreds of new pupae guarantees that this illusion will endure, securing the throne for another year. In the dark incubator vaults, the stolen cocoons are laid side by side on warm beds of damp soil. Within days, the silk coverings will be gently chewed open by worker nurses, revealing pale, newly emerged Formica ants. Born into a world of servitude, these unwitting offspring will immediately begin constructing tunnels, foraging for food, and defending the very raiders who plundered their native home. Through bloodshed and deception, a new generation takes up the burden of keeping their masters alive. What happens next changes everything. Near the main entrance, the wounded commander drags herself into a quiet chamber. Her sharp sickle mandibles, useless for feeding herself or carrying soil, rest motionless against the dirt. She has fulfilled her evolutionary purpose. The cost was high, dozens of her sisters sacrificed, her own body broken, but the continuation of her line is assured. She settles into the darkness as the colony's internal life hums around her with renewed vigor. Miles away across the pine needle floor, the shattered Formica colony begins the painstaking process of rebuilding. Their queen remains unharmed deep in the earth, already laying fresh batches of eggs to replace the lost generation. The war is far from over. In the Rocky Mountains, peace is merely an illusion between raids, and survival is a daily debt paid in blood. A stolen pupa drops into the dark dirt, and an empire hinges on this single breath.